I just had another what we call what I refer to, or I say to myself privately or silently, uh, a full circle moment, particularly when I sneeze, when I'm experiencing something as a result of what I experienced that I sneeze at. When you're a polarity integrator, that's like coming full circle. A circle, the one, the dot in the center of a circle, which is the law of spheres, which is the law of one, which is eternal love vibration. So what I was experiencing is I monitor different channels, particularly in the what I call the gambling casino. I don't think I've ever addressed this very much, but it does play a very, very important point in balancing the magnetosphere. Okay, believe it or not. And that is competitive sports. Because I was introduced into competition, because corporations compete against each other. And so they also, how do I put this, cannibalize each other. And they actually bet on losses, and they bet on gains, much like if you've ever played a game called craps for real fake money, actually, because it's not real living light, it's artificial light through artificial intelligence. So you're simulating a game based on numbers. Numbers have functions. Okay, what's the function of a 4? Well, you know what a quad is, right? That's 4. You know what a 4-square tetrahedron is, right? Heat, fuel, oxygen, flashpoint, ignition. Bang! Now you got a fire. That's a circle of light. That's the function of 4. H2 plus 1 equals 3. 3 times 4 is 12. 12-strand DNA. Okay? So they play numbers games. That's why all their jerseys, particularly in football, are all numbers. And it's funny because this guy, they have a show on Fox that I watch from time to time, and I put a lot of comments in there. And some of them do get highlighted, particularly when I address cyberspace, cybernetic, and cyborgs. Borg. Because I've sort of known this already, but when you're simulating, particularly when I was watching an NBA basketball game, and when you're running a faster chip than the AI, I could see the AI actually move the ball midair, change the arc, actually. So that the ball will go into the hoop. And the player itself, it doesn't necessarily realize it's the AI that's simulating and making the correction so the proper numbers go up on the scoreboard. Now, some of these players are actually very aware because they were exposing this a long time ago. As a matter of fact, there was a book written, I think, in the 1970s sometime. And I knew this because of where I grew up in the 1950s near the Bay Area in San Francisco, because my dad would go take me up to St. Mary's College to where I would see the San Francisco 49ers, which is a professional football team, work out during spring training. So I met a lot of these guys. And I played football when I was a kid because I loved to catch the ball and throw the ball and have fun, right? But it's a sport that is violent, which is force against force. X against X, X's and O's, right? So you realize that these guys are getting fame and fortune to hurt themselves. They're hurting each other. So they're experiencing pain and suffering because at the end of every game, they have to have trainers and doctors to try and get them back up to speed to rehabilitate themselves in order to perform the next function. Now we're back to computer terminals and rule-based functions. What's the function of the numbers? So they run number games through their bowls, BL bowl games. So these arenas become huge battery arenas in which emotional energy is going back and forth between, oh, they lost. Oh, they lost. So it's an emotional game. So they're gaming the energy that is in motion through competition. And so you can see, without getting into the larger mathematical stuff of quantifying and qualifying a planetary magnetosphere, of how competition works that way between dividing, if you will, the gates or the pole, right? Instead of being mated to be one, they're separated, right, between red pill, blue pill, right? You want the red pill, Neon? You want to go down the rabbit hole, right? So now you get into the underworld Westgate, right? X Geek Squad. So I was watching a little video about the difference between false light, artificial light. So you know they can't clone a spirit, okay? So when a spirit is in the light integrated with the soul, they can't fool the soul because the soul is what love is, right? So that's the highest state of awareness because you're vibrating at a high rate of speed. So that's their method. They don't want you vibrating at a high rate of speed. They want you arguing against each other between one computer terminal and another computer terminal in order to generate what? A negative emotional reaction state by losing. So they graph that across the entire planetary grid of all the batteries that are here simultaneously. Simulcast. You know what a simulcast is? Now, in the early days when they were first getting their networks up and connecting with each other, particularly through professional sports and particularly through the Olympics, right? And I think Tokyo 1976 is one I remember where they were, as advertised, salesmen do advertise from Madison Avenue, which are known as Mad Men. Mad Men. They're mad, all right, okay? Which means unsane. Now we're back to 5150 to headquarters with, what's his name? Broderick Crawford in a black and white TV series back in the 1950s called Highway Patrol. And he would say 5150 to headquarters. So he's a 5150. A 5150 in California under their penal code is considered insane. So he was identifying himself as insane and letting everybody know on the radio, I am insane. Insane is calling you. You got to translate the codes. Okay? So what happens is if you do something that you're considered insane, like a self-suicide program, they can take you to the emergency room. Then you can have a doctor, right? Say you're 5150. Now you have what's called a psych hold. Psych hold. Psycho, mental pathway hold. Because, it's just like Neo said. Seems to be you're living two lives, Neo. One of those lives has a future. The other does not. Whoa, now we're into artificial light intelligence, and real living light, like powerful living photons kicking out electrons. That sounds like a Neo. So he was telling Neo, you got a future, buddy. We're blaming it all on you. You came before the machine. That's right. We came before the machine. We came before their tech. So the spirit that is in that mirror that is running powerful photons or powerful light is a Neo. Because he's not held captive by something that's lower than what he is, because he's the one. So the machine did not become before an eternal love vibration. And that's basic logic. So in this particular case, it was pretty funny because on this show, I was listening to an NFL Hall of Fame football player talking about experience, about a guy that's never going to be able to recover his stature as a quarterback in the NFL because, as Shannon put it, the rest of the locker room has lost faith and trust in the quarterback because he's not performing his function. What is the function? To play the position. What is a position? It's a number on the field. And he wears a number on his jersey. So what caused me to sneeze was when he was saying that the coaches were blaming, how would we put this? It sort of reminds me when my father was a command of the United States Navy. And you have everybody that's underneath the hierarchy because now you have an inverted pyramid of control, top-down command and control architecture. And I knew this myself because I grew up in all this from being in the military academy at 5 years of age. Okay? if I'm in charge, and I've been in charge before, I've been a captain and I've been a chief officer in wildland fire control, that means that everybody that is underneath my command, I'm responsible for, which means the buck stops with me. So I realize that if I'm going to place any expectations on the script, the director of the script, now we're the director of casting spells, now we're in the simulcast, simulating spells, simulating the cast of spells. So when it's a simulcast, it means everybody can experience a simulation all at the same time, because it doesn't apply to the time codes or the time zones between Tokyo and, say, Los Angeles. You're experiencing in Los Angeles what's going on in Tokyo at the same moment. Speed. Okay? Now you begin to understand the speed of the chip, the binary stuff. So as it turned out, Mr. Shannon Sharp was talking about, ultimately, what I was experiencing in me, empathy. Your ability to experience what somebody else is experiencing in energy. That's when I sneezed. Because what happens is what the comment that he was trying to make is that the coaches have never played that position. And not only that, but the coach is not the same being as the quarterback. So they don't have any empathy. That was the point. Because what he was trying to say is you're judging the performance objective, which is a function of the competitor that is separated from the other side by the division on the field. Because you can see the horizontal line that goes between one side of a rectangle on a football field. And you have an H on each side, which stands for hydrogen, which is atomic number 1. These are the games that they play with numbers, okay, in competition. So the coach doesn't have any empathy for his quarterback because he's not the quarterback. And yet he's judging the performance of the quarterback because he's supposed to perform up to what? A standard. And that standard of performance is not being met. So the guy on the sideline who is a coach, who doesn't have any empathy, is going to get upset if the guy that he can't experience, because he's not experiencing what that guy is experiencing, to have any empathy for what he isn't able to do that he's expected to do by a director of programming. You see how that works? The director of programming has expectations on your performance objective based on rule-based functions of your computer terminal. That's right, because we're running on math codes. Have a great day. I love you all. Be good to yourselves.